You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody. I had no idea how excited I would be to talk about this film that we are talking about today. It is 2017's The Greatest Showman. And let me just start by saying I didn't even know how much I would like this movie. A few years ago, I gave my mom the Christmas present of Film Festival Fridays. We would pick a movie that was out in theaters and we would go see it. And this week, this was a new movie. I had seen the trailer. It looked okay. I like Hugh Jackman. I figured I would, do a nice thing for my mom because I knew she wanted to see it, and I would go see this movie with her with my expectations quite low.
Taking one for the team. Exactly.
Well, by I think the second song, I think I may have actually started crying because this movie is so good. And I convinced myself that I was going to make Mike come see this movie.
She did.
And I can't remember if I saw it. I drug you to it like either the very next day or 2 days later, because that was a Friday. I think Sunday we went. Mm-hmm. Later that week or the following weekend, I went with a friend, Tammy. Hey, shout out to Tammy. We saw it. And then I think, did we maybe drag one or both of the kids when I took you?
Yeah, I think it was the younger of the comics that lives with us rent-free.
Oh, I thought I made everybody see it. Because I was just like, I know you guys don't think this is going to be a good movie, but this is an amazing movie. It moved me on so many levels. And take out what you will about P.T. Barnum. Okay, maybe he was a good guy, maybe he was a bad guy. Honestly, I don't care because this movie just kind of stands alone for me. And the storytelling and the way that they do it and the people involved. Let's just get into it. This movie was directed by Michael Gracie, which at the time, he had only directed commercials, but most recently directed Pink's new documentary called All I Know So Far. He was kind of a newcomer, but Hugh had seen, I think, some of his commercial work and felt like he could do it. It stars Hugh Jackman, Michelle Williams, Zac Efron, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, and Keala Settle. Hugh had been working on this film for like 9 years trying to get it made and could not get it made. The notable crew in this movie are the songwriters. Mm-hmm. Help me, Mike. Pasek?
Pasek, Paul, yeah,
and Justin Paul.
Yep.
And they wrote Dear Evan Hansen, the music, James and the Giant Peach, and they did the music for the film that we're going to do next weekend, La La Land. So
one of the reasons that Hugh had a hard time getting it made was because at that time, especially before it even came out, because remember, this is 9 years, Hollywood was not sure that an original musical would work. And coincidentally, during the tail end of that 9-year period, Pasek Paul were involved with La La Land. And as I recall the story, they weren't hired to do the entire film. They were asked to submit work for individual songs and ended up doing all of them because, as we can see, they're very talented at what they do. And there's the story that Hugh tells that they were still not sure. They were having to pitch the studio on it. And you can find on the YouTubes or in the special features of the movie, the performance of This Is Me, that I believe was what sold the executives on it. In retrospect, this has made, $80 bazillion. It's ridiculous.
You're
how
jumping ahead
well
to
this
the numbers.
is done. Sorry. The studio finally made a good decision. This was a good one.
Yeah, and they actually wrote This Is Me on the plane on the way to the final pitch to Sony to get them. I believe it was Sony, even though the studio that signed this was 20th Century Fox. But I thought one of the extras on the DVD that we watched, I thought Hugh said they were pitching to Sony. So anyway, I digress. But they wrote that on the plane on the way there.
Where does this land time-wise with Les Mis?
Oh, way after.
The version with Russell and Hugh?
Yeah, let me look it up.
Okay. Because that was a musical that was an established musical. That was an original work. But you would think that they would say, oh, well, gosh, we've seen Hugh Jackman in Les Mis. Like, this guy, he's a bankable box office name. We should go ahead and greenlight this show. How expensive could it be? We'll get some buzz. So credit to Hugh for being persistent in the face of not a lot of support for what is it turns out a great idea.
Yeah, Les Mis was 2012, so 5 years previous.
So Pitch Perfect era.
Yes, exactly. But I think, I just think that Hollywood wasn't ready for all of these musicals, which now, I mean, look at, they've dug them all up, Cats, and, say what you will if they're good or not. But I think definitely this one kind of kicked open that door. La La Land maybe kicked it open, and this one followed soon after.
I love that the musicals are coming back.
I love it.
Right? I love singing and dancing.
I want to see Wicked. I want to see, I think War Paint would be a good one.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's the story of Eve Arden and another cosmetic person that I can't remember.
So we did get Into the Woods.
Yes.
Right. So, but those are well-known established properties from Broadway that they've moved to film, whereas The Greatest Showman was brand new.
Yes. They've been talking about a Book of Mormon movie, but they just haven't done it yet.
Got to get Ben Platt. That's all I'm saying.
Well, they got to get Ben and Andrew Reynolds before they get... I mean, Andrew still looks... He could totally play a missionary boy right now, but they got to hurry up. He can't be like 50.
Right. Or you're going to have to do some of that Tom Hanks kind of CGI.
Or what did they do? What was the Robert De Niro one on Netflix? What was that movie? The Irishman?
Oh, that sounds right. Or the youngified, I thought, Robert Downey Jr. for one of the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
It starts getting a little creepy. So let's just go ahead and make it.
Let's get going. Okay, back to The Greatest Showman.
Back to The Greatest Showman.
So it was written by Jenny Bix, who also did Rio, and she was the producer on Sex and the City, and Bill Condon, who wrote Dreamgirls and Chicago. So a couple other musicals. The synopsis is this celebrates the birth of show business and tells of a visionary who rose from nothing to create a spectacle that became a worldwide sensation. The tagline for the film is "The impossible comes true." Mike, kick us off with your pickup line.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.
And it's part of a song, right?
Yes, it's sung by Hugh Jackman.
Drops you right into the action of the film. We see Hugh Jackman. I mean, we know that The Greatest Showman, we've seen the posters. We see him in his red coat and his top hat. And this drops you right into who he is as the ringmaster.
So this is a flash forward.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, the first time I saw it, I was a little confused about when we go from this flash forward number and then we go back to him as a child. It wasn't obvious to me that it was a flash forward until later.
But the editing of that transition is beautiful because the music kind of dies down and it's just spinning around him. The camera is spinning around him. And then we look into his eyes. And then when we pull back, he's a little boy looking into a storefront.
With the top hat. They put the reflection of the young actor in the position like he was wearing the top hat. So they dissolve from Hugh's adult face to the boy's face. Ziv something or other. He was a young man who played a young P.T. Barnum.
Yes, it was great. It was a great editing move to take us from this high energy open, get us excited about this story, and then transition. Now we're going to take you back to where he came from.
Right. And there's good storytelling in that they cut to a close-up of his feet and one of his shoes. The tongue of it has, come up and you can see him wiggle his toes. So in that one shot, about 1 second, it tells us, oh, they're dead broke.
Right, exactly. And so we go from that. There's not a whole lot of dialogue. His dad drags him to the home of a wealthy person in the community, and a young P.T. Barnum sees a young Charity, his love interest. And then we roll into the second song.
A Million Dreams.
Yes, A Million Dreams. And that kind of speeds us through their love story. In the course of this song, we see them go from child to teenager to young adult to them getting together and having two children.
Right. I believe the number ends with him standing behind her, putting his hands on her pregnant belly.
Right. So it speeds us through like, okay, this isn't important, but they get together and we get them here, where we need them to be in the course of the story.
And it also establishes a couple of motifs here. One is the animals from the circus, right? So we see him with a candle in the abandoned kind of building with the lions and the different things made out of the shapes of the shadows. And it also has the shadows, the silhouettes and the shadows is a recurring theme. So great filmmaking, right? To have that motif that's carried through.
Yep. Absolutely. I did make a note that by the 30-minute mark, it almost feels like, okay, we've got this great, I mean, you talk about the 3-act structure. It's the beginning of the first act when, man goes from poor to rich, has this beautiful wife, these 2 great kids. He, after scrapping and scraping, he creates this circus, which was not popular at first, and then starts selling tickets. And he brings Charity home to the home that they explored as children. And you're like, wow, this feels like a happy ending. Mm-hmm. But we're only 30 minutes in, so we know something bad is going to happen.
Right. I would say the kind of end of Act 1, as I see it, is that day he loses his job and it's his daughter's birthday.
Oh,
so
okay.
It really raises the stakes on that poor schmuck. And then you see him go through, there's that inflection inside Act 2 where, having taken a chance, and let's not sugarcoat it, it was fraud. Right?
Yes.
He said he
got
had
the loan.
ships he didn't have. The trivia says that there's a sign in their apartment about lotteries. And so historically, Barnum was hustling. He was trying to find something, anything to make money. And at that time, if you're poor, right, and you're hungry and you're trying to feed your family.
He was poor, scrappy, and hungry.
He really was. He was, in a sense, he could have been an immigrant in that regard.
Yes.
And he was actually not, 50 years? 60 years after Hamilton was set, right? It wasn't that long,
True.
Long past it. And he's going through that. You see some initial success, right? And they go through some tough times, but you see that initial success. And you're right, as a viewer, you're thinking, well, kind of things are great. We're done, right?
And he kind of is somewhat of a hero because he's taken all of these oddities, these people who society has cast aside, who, like the little person who was living with his mom was like kind of locked behind his door. And the bearded woman is in the corner of the wash facility, kind of just hidden behind this curtain. He's taken all of these oddities that society has pushed away and he has brought them to prominence. He has put them in the center stage and he's making them something that you could question, his motives and everything, but he's brought them to the light. And so it's somewhat of look at him. He's, helping these people out. If nothing else, they're making a living.
When he's selling the idea to the short-statured actor, he says, they're going to laugh anyway, kid. You might as well get paid for it.
Right.
But I think much kind of like with the Misfits that we talked about in Pitch Perfect, this is the band of misfits. And I think more people feel like outcasts and misfits than maybe we understand. But those of us who grew up as being outcast and misfit, who have, historical evidence, we really resonate with that. These are the freaks, the oddities, just like Judd Apatow mined in Freaks and Geeks, right? That
right.
Square pegs, that there is this sense of, I think a lot of people who are creatives, of being that weird odd man out, as it were. And he tapped into that, maybe not, like you said, for the perfect altruistic reasons, but he is giving them a forum and what appears to be a safe place.
Right. Okay, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Okay, so when we were watching this yesterday, and your favorite song, Never Enough, he is in the wings looking at Jenny Lind sing for the first time because he never heard her sing before. He just heard she was the best, so he thinks he wants the best.
Right, and there's this funny line that he says she's the voice of an angel, and then he says later, oh God, I hope she can sing.
Right. So he's looking at her, and it very much feels like the male gaze. I want to ask you, is he looking at her as earning potential and the fame that he will get from kind of discovering her in America and presenting her to America? Or is the adoration that he's looking at her with is that he's falling in love with Jenny?
I think it's more the latter. I think the way that plays to me as a viewer is he sees this person who's incredibly talented, and they obviously picked a pretty actress to play the role. So it looks to me like he is besotted or enamored with her. It's the great juxtaposition of Charity looking past her to see him looking at Jenny Lind, right? So that kind of triplet there.
Yeah, it's a great love triangle because the audience watches him watch Jenny, and then Charity watch him watch Jenny. which is
Right.
we all feel for Charity, because what's worse than your husband falling in love with somebody else, but you watching it, right? She has to witness it. It's torture. I feel so bad for
It certainly
Charity
would
at that
be.
point.
And so this is a bit of a digression into costuming, but if you'll notice, in the film, the costume designer had very specific colors for each of them.
Yes.
So PT tends to be wearing red, his red jacket.
Right.
Charity is often in blue, light blue, but blue of some sort.
Yep.
And you'll see Philip has a maroon top hat, so definitely there's kind of the men. And Jalen is in white, with one exception.
Yeah, she's almost always in white.
She wears a purple dressing gown. I think they chose that specifically to show that she had that dressing gown was right at the scene when they're in the hotel room together, to show that she had become enmeshed in his family.
Right. And so I'm torn because I definitely, his look to Jenny, not to like belabor this point, but his look to Jenny definitely does look like the male gaze. But because he never made advances, and not only in the hotel room, he kind of rebuffs her advances, I think he lost track of what was important, being Charity and the girls, and got, he was always chasing kind of the limelight and success and fame in that way. So I think that's more what he was falling in love with was, oh my God, she sings like an angel. I can make so much money with this woman. I guess, I don't know if that's me just wanting it to be and wanting his loyalty to be with Charity.
Okay, so I have historically taken the position that allegedly something went on. However, the counter argument is her reaction, both in the hotel room and then kissing him on stage. She acts like a woman scorned. Now, maybe she had fallen in love with him, but there's the scene where they're in the train at night and she leans over and puts her head on his shoulder to sleep. I think as a viewer, we're supposed to think that there was romance there. Now, maybe there was no consummation in a physical fashion, but I think that level of intimacy, I'm just thinking if I was to lean my head on some woman's shoulder and take a nap, you might think things were a little hinky. So I think we're, as a viewer, supposed to think that.
Okay. I'm going to choose. Because when she does that, he's asleep. So, I mean, I don't know who could sleep through that, but
it's a level of intimacy that is being portrayed. It's show, don't tell. I think that, like I said, it's a gray area. Maybe they did not bump uglies, but they're definitely in this kind of gray area where there's an intimacy that Charity is uncomfortable with, and Michelle Williams delivers that great in that scene. She delivers that, and then the director gives us the scenes of her feeding the girls dinner and being by herself, and he cuts in with the silhouette again, as I mentioned, of her dancing with PT, and then it cuts to Jenny and PT. So definitely we're led to believe that if nothing else, Charity thinks that's what's going on.
Oh, okay. Okay. I could buy that. All right. Good note.
Thank you.
Okay. I did notice there is a scene when he takes them. Oh, this makes so much sense though. When he takes Charity and the girls to the circus to show them that he's gotten the loan and he's bought a circus, both he and Charity are in green. And that makes sense because to him, this is when they're going to make their money.
Nice.
And one edit that I really loved was that we both noted. I don't think we paused to note it, but we just noted it. When things start to go south, I think it's right about the time that Jenny tries to kiss him. They're throwing flowers on stage to Jenny when he's with her on tour.
Right.
And then back at home, the circus isn't doing well. And so people are throwing apples to the performers at the circus. And so there's this great edit between the two of audiences throwing objects, but one is of great praise and one is of great disgust.
And they show that he's kind of left two families behind for Jenny, not just Charity and the girls, but also the people in the circus. And now, much like Charity is left behind to pick up the pieces, so is Philip, played by Zac Efron, left behind to pick up the pieces of the circus. So I think, kind of getting back to what was before, certainly the character of PT is distracted by the fame. And in the last number of the film, from now on, he talks about that kings and queens and distracted by the limelight. And so he's going to recommit himself to his two families from now on.
Right. And so we really haven't mentioned But let's talk about Zac Efron's character arc. He's kind of like the spoiled rich boy who has so much money that he doesn't need a job. And so he makes these plays that he even admits to when he meets P.T. Barnum that he doesn't even like. Because P.T. walks up to him and says, "Are you the one that wrote this play?" And he goes, "You can get your money back over there." Like, he just assumes that that's why he's approaching him, is that people, like pretend to like his stuff.
And there's a great line that Philip delivers in that conversation that I think is pretty applicable to today is PT asks him, how do you sell so many tickets, right? When he's having a hard time getting people in. And the Philip character says, "It's because I'm selling virtue."
Right.
So the people that go there don't actually like it. They're just trying to demonstrate that they're virtuous.
Right. They want to say that they went to the play because that's where all of the scene people go. Yeah.
Right.
So Philip's character falls in love with Zendaya, which is what had to have been extremely controversial at the time, which we see his parents are highly disapproving of this relationship because she's a black girl and probably because she's in the circus. She's one of the oddities. She's one of those people that the rich people don't pay attention to. They don't even consider them.
Something that wasn't covered explicitly in the film is that P.T. Barnum was born in an era when slavery was still legal in the U.S. And at one point, he apparently bought a slave to then pitch as George Washington's nanny, as kind of one of these gimmicks to get people to come in. And I don't know exactly when this is, but this may have been set before the Civil War even. So in today's day and age, we can understand that there would be some maybe discomfort with a biracial couple. But back then, 150 years ago, that was certainly very scandalous, very much socially looked down upon by the rich folk.
That's amazing because Cameron came in and he was reading the trivia and he said that PT went on to run for office and he ran on like an anti-slavery ticket.
Yeah, he apparently changed his mind after he owned one.
Ugh. Just owning a person. Ugh.
Yeah, it's, again, at the time, was that considered normal for that era? It seems ridiculous. And I would say, to his credit, the statements that he made later on in life reflect, which I think to be a more evolved perspective. And it's hard for us to understand that, I think. I just bring all of that up to say that when I first saw the film, there's this love between the Zac Efron character and the Zendaya character. And it didn't really strike me as that because I think we're accustomed to having people from different races romantically involved in a way that is not true 150 years ago.
Right. So sorry, folks. We digressed a little bit, but let's get back to the film.
A song and dance, more musical numbers.
I know it's a hard write, but I'm going to bring it back. The music in this moves the story along so great. It is a classic musical. There is dialogue acted out through the use of the music and the dance numbers. I mean, I should have looked up this choreographer too. I mean, the dance numbers, I left this film the first time I saw it feeling like I could dance because it was just so electrifying and so choreographed. All of the numbers with the oddities and the circus folks, the one at the end where they come back to PT and just, you made us a family, now come. Oh, because there's a tragic fire and the circus burns down. And so they're done. And they come back and they say basically say to him, come on, we gotta build and do this again. And he realizes that after kind of being distracted by the fame that he thought Jenny Lind would bring him, that his true family is with the oddities that are in the circus. And he kind of, from now on, he's going to have a new way of looking at things and a new perspective and a new priority.
Well, also, though, have a little sympathy for Jenny Lind because she gets kind of tossed to the curb in this whole thing. Poor dear. She got lumped in there. But yes, he's rededicating himself, which I think, I'm not sure I'm up to running to chase a train, but when you see Hugh Jackman singing, go out the door of that bar, running for the train, singing From Now On, I mean, you just want to get up and run.
Yeah. The music carries you through this entire film. I mean, you don't ever go like, ugh, when is this movie going to be over? Like, there's no lapse. They almost don't give you room to breathe, but in a good way, because it just propels you from one great song and with great choreography to the next.
I remember saying at the time, and I stand by my assessment, that if you do not get a little misty-eyed the first time you hear Never Enough, you may be dead inside.
Yes. We both still kind of get teary when we hear it.
Yeah. The music is fantastic. I think the sales of the album would support that. I believe in the year of 2018, it was the number one selling album.
Yeah, it's great. And it's been covered a bunch of people on YouTube, as well as they even made a follow-up album with some different music artists covering some of the songs. Pink is one of them. And it's just, I mean, you had to have tapped into something to get that kind of...
The music is a variety of styles. I don't think I realized quite as much until they did the reimagined album where the Zac Brown band, a country band, covered From Now On. But when you listen to the original recording for the movie, you do hear that like banjo or mandolin in there. There's some of those flavors. So that makes a certain degree of sense. And they said that they were trying to evoke that when they wrote the music, instead of having it be period accurate, to be modern, to show that P.T. Barnum was the person who is thinking to the future, inventing these things. And apparently there was even a line in there that got cut where he talks about he invented the term show business. It just reminds me a little bit of Gene Simmons, Kiss invented show business. But I think P.T. invented everything if you listen to P.T.
Yeah, he is his own best.
So this film is very much about the character of P.T. Barnum and him losing his way and coming back.
Which that may have been a little bit Hollywood, right? Like him coming back.
I think there's 99% of this film is Hollywood. I suspect that P.T. Barnum wasn't as bad as maybe we think he was, but he probably wasn't as good as Hugh Jackman portrayed him. Yeah. Which, by the way, if I needed to have someone portray me in the biopic, I could do worse than Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, he's just, oh my gosh, so good. So just one last thing is the color saturation in this film makes it so visually appealing to watch because you've got Hugh's red coat and Zendaya's pink hair, and you have the bearded woman's like beautiful purple gown. So it's just visually a stimulating movie that keeps you kind of engaged. What did you think?
It was definitely a very saturated look. I actually made a note of Technicolor because it evoked to me those original Technicolor films with the high saturation, which is also part of the Circus. The bright colors and that. And at certain points, they go monochromatic. So after the building burns down, Hugh is wearing all black, and he sees a theater critic who's also in all black and the black bricks. And the colors were obviously very much chosen. And I talked about each of the characters had a common color that was used, which again, is not, they didn't invent this, but this is part of that storytelling. And you see in the last scene when they're at the beach, P.T.'s character is now wearing blue like Charity's. And you'll also notice the classic orange and blue color palette occurs several times throughout the film, where maybe the sky is blue and the lamplight is orange early on, or there's an orange sky with PT and Charity in blue at the end. So you definitely see these very strong saturated colors throughout the entire film.
Yeah, it's visually a stunning film. The cinematography is beautiful. The music is great. The sound design is fabulous. There's some CGI that bumped me a teeny tiny bit just because, I mean, I'd love to know if that was for your average film viewer or if it was just me, but it's a stunning, stunning movie. I would love, if you have not watched this film, I would love it if you give it a try just because of some of the things that we've said here today. So how about a driving review?
There were no motor vehicles in this film. There are a couple fire wagons pulled by horses. I did have a question, though. At the end of the film, he shows up to meet his wife and daughters on an elephant. And do you have tags for that elephant? Was that a thing back then?
My thought is, okay, where did the elephant just wait out front while the performance was going on? Or did the elephant find its way back to the circus on its own? And then how did all four of them get home?
That's a very large elephant, by the way. I will mention, though, that the 426 Hemi was colloquially known as the elephant back in the day. So it's a tiny bit of an automotive link there. So we could say that maybe that was the original Mopar.
Sure. Let's say that.
Let's say that. Jumbo. Fun fact, Jumbo the elephant from the circus became the mascot for Tufts University.
There you go. What do you know? There was a train.
There was a train. That is true.
They rode the train.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was there any head trauma? Oh, there was a fight that broke out shortly after, I think, one of the first couple performances of the circus. Some of the oddities, some of the townspeople started a fight with some of the oddities.
Mm-hmm. There was a brawl. I don't know if there was head trauma in that brawl.
There are two great numbers that take place in the bar. No head trauma, but there are two great, fabulous numbers. One with Zac Efron and P.T. Barnum, and then one at the end that we referred to from now on that are just fabulous use of beer mugs and beer steins and shot glasses. And it's not a bar fight, but that's what made me think of it.
When P.T. Barnum runs out of it, we see that the name of the bar is something like McSorley's or something, very Irish. And I thought, we don't rarely go after that cultural appropriation of always saying that the drunks are the Irish. But really, I mean, come on, guys. Maybe in 1850, that was a reasonable bar name.
Yeah, we would have to cancel St. Patrick's Day if we did that.
That's true. Don't want to cancel that.
Yeah. Got to keep those rivers green. How about a smoochie?
Smoochy, smoochy, smoochy.
Let's see, when do we get our first charity and PT smoochie?
Our first smoochie's at 32.57.
And then do we have like when Charity leaves him and then they get back together? Do we have another smoochie?
Well, I have at 1 hour, 14 minutes, 30 seconds, I believe is when Zach and Zendaya have their smoochie.
That's right.
And then at 1 hour, 28 minutes, and 20 seconds is when Jenny Lynn kisses PT in public.
Oh, no. And it gets captured.
Right.
On film.
Mm-hmm.
But then I loved it. They were all taking pictures, but the picture that showed up in the newspaper was like a sketch.
A line drawing, right?
Like, why were we taking pictures?
So I will be honest, I'm not sure whether it was common to have photography in a nighttime performance in an opera house like that.
Especially with the way those flashes were.
Yeah, the black powder in a tray flash. But we need to keep in mind that this was not a period piece. This was not intended to be historically accurate. And to the filmmaker's credit, they told you that in the very first frame of the trailer, I believe, where you see Hugh Jackman's hand on a cane with a wedding ring.
I remember I came home and noticed that.
And we did a little research, and wedding rings were not popular for gentlemen until around World War II. And we also noticed, by the way, this is just for all the D&D nerds out there, that when they go to visit the Queen of England, the beefeaters, her guard, are holding halberds and not partisans. They have the wrong polearm. I think everybody who played D&D back in the day probably understands the difference between those two polearms, but they are not correct.
Okay, only the D&D people heard you, because I heard you saying words, but I don't know what any of them meant.
Yeah, my people will know.
Okay. All right, should we go to the numbers?
Let's go to the numbers.
Okay. So I don't know if I said it before, this is a 20th Century Fox film. Its budget was $84 million, and it made that domestically, more than doubled that at $174 million domestically, and $438 million worldwide. So I would say this film was a success.
And we mentioned that the album sales were also through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. Was there a video game spinoff on this one?
I don't believe so.
Right.
I'm just thinking what that would be. Back when the boys used, remember how sometimes some of the films would inspire like a video game that would be a web-based on like Burger King's or website or something. I could see the get PT around to all the different oddities and back to the circus in time or something.
Right.
So it had a score of 7.6 on IMDb. I neglected to look up the Rotten Tomatoes score, but let's just say it was probably pretty high. It was an hour and 45 minutes, and it was rated PG, a biography, drama, and a musical.
This is one of my favorite movies. So a score of 7 point whatever, that's a travesty. It's a crime.
I would give this one a 9. I mean, I have to give it a 9. I paid money to go back to the theater 5 times. I've never done that.
You wouldn't give it a 10?
I don't know. I mean, you're right. I always reserve the 10 because there could be something better, but then why have a 10?
Why don't you just make 10 that much louder?
All right, I give it a 10.
I'll go to 11.
Yeah, this is a pretty good movie. Okay, anything else?
I think I've said plenty.
I think we said. So, if we have changed your mind for the good or hopefully not the bad. Hopefully
don't worry about that.
Hopefully we didn't ruin this for anybody.
Yeah. Tell us
but
how
if we
smart
did,
are.
I'd be curious to hear it. Give us a call. Let us know. You can call 971-245-4148 and leave a message. Let us know how we did with this film. Let us know if you love this film. Let us know what your favorite song in the film is. And if you know of a college film for our upcoming college month in September, we need one more. So we would love to get any ideas that you have for that. And we are running a contest that will be finishing up next week in July. If you leave a review with us, your name will be entered in a giveaway, and we will pay for the streaming service of your choosing for a month. So give us a review on iTunes or any of the platforms that you listen to our podcast on. Let us know what you think of the podcast, what you think of us. Be kind.
I think we can offer a shout out.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
You will get it. Well, when we announce who the winner is, you will definitely get a shout out. And we will read your review on air. So for everybody.
And if you come by the studio, I'll sign your arm with a Sharpie.
That's true. You're welcome to come see Studio D, where we make the magic happen.
That's right.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Greatest Showman. Next week, we will be doing La La Land, another Pasek and Paul film. So we will be talking about the music in that one as well. And never forget,
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.